Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty massive shift in how we actually define what it really means to be smart. For generations, we've all been handed this very specific and frankly kind of limited blueprint of intelligence. We've been told it's all about how much raw data you can just cram into your brain. But today, we're going to completely rethink that blueprint and explore the true architecture of intellectual mastery.
Okay, let's dive into this. Do you actually need straight A's to be smart? I mean, think about it for a second. We literally all know someone who was an absolute genius on paper, right? Like maybe they aced every single exam they ever took, but they completely fell apart the second things didn't go exactly according to plan out in the real world. And that's because the real difference between people who struggle and people who truly thrive isn't just what they know, it's how they think.
See, we often grew up believing this total myth. The myth that intelligence was just about knowing more stuff, memorizing facts, always having the right answer on the tip of your tongue, having a flawless memory. Essentially, just building up this endless, chaotic encyclopedia of information in your head. But the reality? It's entirely different. True intelligence is actually about how you process the world around you. It's about how you look at problems, and, absolutely crucially, how you handle the exact same things that stress everyone else out. You really don't need a perfect memory to be smart. What you need is to build a dynamic set of habits, and today, we're going to walk through exactly what those habits are.
Let's jump right into our first major paradigm shift. Habit number 1, curiosity over conflict. Why smart people don't fight to be right.
So, think about this. Most people take a simple disagreement and instantly turn it into this exhausting, ego-driven battle. They get mad, they argue, and their whole goal suddenly becomes trying to prove that the other person is wrong or maybe even stupid. It's just a totally defensive reaction focused purely on winning the argument. But we got to make a shift here. Smart people do something entirely different. They focus on learning the truth. So, instead of fighting, they ask questions. And I don't mean those snarky trick questions designed to make someone look foolish. I mean genuine, real questions. They aren't trying to win a fight, they're genuinely trying to understand a different perspective. Instead of arguing, they use a brilliantly simple script, something like, "Help me understand why you think that," or maybe, "What happened that made you feel this way?" Honestly, I highly recommend you try this exact phrasing today. It's a real game changer. Here's a fascinating bit of psychology for you. When you stop fighting and just ask an open-ended question, you actually neurologically disarm a defensive person. By mirroring their concern or asking them to explain, their defenses drop almost instantly. They actually start listening to you and they open up. That is when real conversations happen. You can't just force someone to agree with you, but by asking them to unpack their own ideas, well, they quite often end up changing their own minds.
Which brings us perfectly to habit number 2, seeing the big picture, zooming out like a camera. Think about how most of us handle adversity. A lot of people get stuck on incredibly small problems. They hit one micro failure, maybe it's a single bad test grade or someone telling them no, and they just spiral. They immediately internalize it, thinking, "Oh, I'm worthless," or "My whole life is falling apart because of this one bad day." But zooming out means treating failure not as some ultimate proof of inadequacy, but as completely neutral information that you use to find patterns. A really smart person treats a bad grade not as a total disaster, but as a signal. Maybe they just need to study a bit differently next time. Maybe they literally just need more sleep before a big exam. Rejection isn't an endpoint, guys, it's just a data point.
And the magic happens when you treat failure as data, because you start turning terrifying problems into solvable puzzles. It gives us a really clear roadmap. Instead of panicking, a smart person pauses and asks a few key things. Okay, what's really going on here? What can I actually control? And what should I try next? By walking through these specific questions, you aren't just reacting with sheer panic, you're actually planning. You're taking a super chaotic situation and organizing it into a puzzle that you already have the tools to solve.
All right, on to habit 3, controlling what you can. Where to spend your mental energy. Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is it addresses one of the biggest energy drains we face as humans. Most people waste just a staggering amount of mental energy worrying about things they absolutely cannot control. I mean, think about how exhausting it is to constantly worry about whether it's going to rain tomorrow, or what your friends secretly think about you, or if your boss is going to wake up in a bad mood. I actually want you to take a screenshot of this mental model right now and just keep it on your phone. Smart people have a very simple rule. If I can't control it, I do not think about it. If you look at things completely out of your control, like the weather, other people's opinions, the final hiring decision in a job, you just have to let them go. Because by releasing your grip on those things, you free up massive amounts of energy to execute on what you actually can't control. You can control bringing an umbrella. You can control being kind. You can control doing your absolute best in that interview. When you stop worrying about everything, you actually start fixing the things that really matter.
Let's move right along to habit 4, using quiet as a tool, the strategic use of silence. We live in an incredibly noisy world, right? And as a result, most people are utterly terrified of awkward silence. Studies actually show it only takes about 4 seconds of silence for a conversation to feel awkward to the human brain. Just 4 seconds. That's why people panic and just rush to fill the void, blurting out literally the very first thing that pops into their head. But here's the secret. Silence makes people pay attention. Smart people are incredibly comfortable with quiet. They listen far more than they talk, and they actually let other people finish their thoughts. Have you ever noticed that quiet people often appear much smarter than loud people? It's because they choose their words so carefully. When you pause before answering, the people listening to you subconsciously assume your eventual answer is going to be incredibly important. So, here is a highly tangible 3-step procedure I want to challenge you to try today. The very next time someone asks you a question, do exactly this. Step 1, listen without interrupting. Step 2, literally count to 3 in your head, just 1, 2, 3. And finally, step 3, answer the question. The reason this works so effectively is actually biological. Counting to 3 allows your highly logical prefrontal cortex to catch up with your impulsive, emotional brain. You'll be absolutely amazed by how much better, more composed, and more thoughtful your answers become just by using silence as a tool.
And that brings us to the climax of our explainer. Habit 5, the power of the pause, restraint over reactivity.
Now, this might just be the most important habit of all. Most people go through life reacting immediately to everything. You know the drill. Someone cuts them off in traffic and they are instantly furious. Someone says something slightly mean and they snap back defensively without even thinking. If something doesn't go their way, their immediate reaction is to complain loudly. But an intellectually masterful person does something completely different. When something bothers them, they do not fire back. Instead, they take a literal physical breath and they ask themselves this really grounding question. Is this actually worth getting upset about? They reframe the moment. They think, hey, maybe this person is just having a really bad day. What's the best way to handle this, and how can I respond in a way that actually helps?
The person who thinks while others react has power. This is the ultimate definition of what it means to be a smart person. Taking a pause isn't about being weak, and it definitely isn't about being a pushover. It is about being truly, fundamentally smart. The person who stays calm while the rest of the room gets totally emotional, that's the person holding all the cards. So let's look at the full picture we've painted today. Here are your 5 habits of intellectual mastery summarized. First, ask to learn, don't argue to win. Replace your ego with genuine curiosity. Second, zoom out to see the pattern. Turn those terrifying problems into solvable puzzles. Third, only focus on what you can control. Conserve that precious mental energy of yours. Fourth, get comfortable with silence. Choose your words carefully so they really have impact. And finally, pause instead of reacting. Hold on to your power. If you start adopting these simple but incredibly profound habits, you won't just look smarter to others. You're going to immediately feel more deeply in control of your entire life.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take out into the real world with you today. When you walk away from this explainer and face the rest of your day, will you blindly react to your next challenge, or will you pause, step back, and take control? The choice and the intelligence to make it is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I absolutely cannot wait to dive into our next topic with you.